modest offering from those few surrounding farms as yet untouched by the spreading calamity.
And welcome back to more Darkest Dungeon. This is episode 19, week 44, getting underway. And we're starting off with the Bumper Crop town event, and we've seen this one before. A very helpful town event. All supply and provision costs are reduced by 100%. So we're going to be loading up for our next quest, Devatron. Okay, so here we are starting off our turn as usual, checking out the fresh recruits on the stagecoach and the trinkets on offer at the Nomad Wagon. As usual, we're not taking anything from either venue. And here we are on the embark screen choosing our quest and filling our party. So if you recall, we've completed all the apprentice level encounters and dungeons, and we've since graduated onto the veteran level dungeons. We did the second version of the Necromancer and the Prophet in the Ruins. And last episode we started with the second version of the Warren's bosses and did the Swine King. And this week we're on to the next boss there, which is called the Unstable Flesh. And just like the last flesh encounter, we're going with Shieldbreaker, Flagellant, Houndmaster, and Vestal. And coming up here, something we haven't seen in a while, an upgrade to the guild.
Every creature has a weakness. The wise hero trains for what she will face.
Okay, so training regimen completely upgraded, and you can see here on the blacksmith, the furnace has also been completely upgraded. Those do the same thing, right? They reduce the cost of whatever you're purchasing at each facility. So from this point forward, when we're in the guild and we're purchasing either new skills or upgrades to existing skills, the costs will be as cheap as they are possible. And likewise in the blacksmith, whenever we're purchasing an upgrade to a hero's armor or weapon, the cost will be as cheap as possible. And now that we're into the mid-game, we're gradually getting more and more comfortable with gold. Now keep in mind, when you buy the higher level upgrades to skills and weapons and armor, those jumps in cost are very high. So you can't just, rip off full upgrades for everyone every week. But given that we've upgraded the training regimen and furnace all the way, it's going to help out quite a bit. Now, as for the order in which you upgrade the various buildings and facilities in the hamlet, it's just highly, highly important, right? It's not something you just, I'll randomly pick this upgrade or this upgrade, you know what I mean? It's one of the very unforgiving games within the game kind of thing. And if you do it in, let's say, less optimal order, I don't want to say wrong order, because you can probably do just about any order and get through the game. But if you do it in a less optimal order, it can make things pretty rough for you. And as for my first couple of playthroughs, I tended to always upgrade buildings so that I got bigger and better skills, or the higher weapon and armor upgrades at the blacksmith, etc. Whereas this time around, I chose to do those upgrades later, and initially I would upgrade the cost reduction parts of the facilities. And I gotta say, I think this is the more optimal way to do it. In the early game, you're just so pressed for gold, and often on into the mid game because of the increasing costs of the upgrades, right? So by reducing those costs, you give yourself a small advantage, and I think in the long run, that's the optimal way to go. Even if it's just one more hero in your party that has upgraded skills, even if they're not the highest level possible, it can really make a difference. So that's the way I did it this playthrough, and I'm sticking to my guns, Devatron. I think that's the optimal approach. Okay, so we're just about ready to go. And as you can probably guess from the title of the episode, or rather what's not in the title of the episode, we did not end up getting the second veteran level shield breaker flashback nightmare sequence. So again, it's just a 50-50 shot. I didn't know that we wouldn't get it. As I was going into this, preparing the group, I had to build the party and outfit us trinket-wise such that we would be getting it, but we didn't end up getting it, so no harm, no foul. It just made the run all that much easier. And here we are provisioning. Again, this is all free, so we're just loading up and we're ready to go. So let's go get the unstable flesh.
I could not store such a prodigious amount of offal, nor could I rid myself of it easily, possessed as it was by unnameable things from outer spheres. When excavations beneath the manor broke through into an ancient network of aqueducts and tunnels, I knew I had found a solution to the problem of disposal. The thing is more terrible than I can describe. An incoherent jumble of organ, sinew, and bone.
Alright, so here we go back into the Warrens, Devatron, after the unstable flesh. We end up getting a pretty good map roll. There are only 2 possible rooms that the boss could be in, so this should be a pretty easy run.
Mechanical hazards, possessed by evil intent.
Now, if you recall 2 episodes ago when we were doing the Fulminating Prophet, I introduced a journal series for the ruins called A Trampled Journal. And like I said, all the other main dungeons have a journal series associated with them, made up of the various journal pages you find throughout the world. So for this episode, I'd like to do the Warrens journal series, and it is called The Blackest of Fates. And we'll get to it just after this next room battle.
The way is lit. The path is clear. We require only the strength to follow it.
Bloodsuckers, Devatron. This infestation is getting out of control.
A powerful blow.
And this is a tough fight, Devatron. 2 sycophants, a supplicant, and a chevalier. Let's hope nobody gets the Crimson Curse.
Slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken. annihilated. The slow death, unforeseen, unforgiving.
Our purpose was to desecrate their animalistic shrines and thus disperse the swine folk. But soon we came across an artifact. This was far beyond the crude fetishes crafted by the pigmen. It looked as if obsidian had been grown and twisted into a dark symbol of worship. It cradled a pulsing red orb, glowing with malevolent light. Cuthbert, Boleyn, and I hesitated, but thrice-damned Mizir, driven by crazed impulse, thrust his torch in a hidden receptacle and thus sealed our fate. In that same instant, we found ourselves in a place of suffocating dark, facing a creature that defies description and whose recollection causes my quill to jump and shudder. It is merciful only fragments of our battle remain in my psyche. I see Cuthbert hacking at the quivering appendages of the monster. I recall how a piece of its flesh sloughed off and of its own twisted accord sprang onto Boleyn, piercing her stout plate. The occultist, as if to offer himself as tribute, was torn apart by its writhing limbs. The assault was overwhelming. With Cuthbert slain, and as Boleyn fell, I was driven by rage. I leapt and drove my axe into the creature's many eyes. Purple ichor splashed my face, and my very soul shook as it bellowed. The only thing I can recall after was falling swiftly into blackness. I now find myself back in the Warrens, among the remains of my companions. My wounds are too severe to allow the completion of my task. Thus, the desecration must resume another time. Curious, there is a ring in my pocket. Where it came from, I cannot begin to guess, though it bears the sigil of the estate's ancestral owner. Very curious. I will return with Cuthbert's banner and Boleyn's crossbow so as to honor them with a proper burial. I will leave what is left of thrice-damned Mizir and his trinkets to the swine folk. Perhaps they will build him the memorial he rightly deserves.
The light, the promise of safety.
Okay, so the Blackest of Fates, Devatron, a rather harrowing account of a routine mission into the Warrens gone awry.
As the light gains purchase, spirits are lifted, and purpose is made clear.
So I hope you enjoyed the Blackest of Fates journal series. It sounds like the party interacted with some kind of mystical curio, which transported them somewhere, and they had to fight some otherworldly being. But again, a very harrowing account and a sad end to their quest.
In Radiance, may we find victory.
And as for the journal author being like us, related in some way to the ancestor, as was indicated by the A Trampled Journal series, didn't seem to be the case. So we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears open for any further connections along those lines. As for now, we've made it to the boss. Again, a real easy run, one room battle, and that's it. So here we go, Devatron, the unstable flesh.
Squirming, contorting, and ever-expanding. This horror must be unmade. Compassion is a rarity in the fevered pitch of battle. wounds of war can be healed, but never hidden. It is as grotesque in death as it was in life. A trifling victory, but a victory nonetheless.
Oh yeah, welcome to the pain train, Devatron. Unstable flesh down. Alright, super easy run there, Devatron. Only one room battle. Thankfully, we didn't get any Crimson Curse from those bloodsuckers. And wow, that damage over time tactic just chews through that boss. Not the best of hauls, but then again, we were barely in the dungeon for 5 minutes. Moving on to XP and quirks. 8 XP for everybody, level 5 for Vitalis. Night Owl is a terrible replacement for Warren's Tactician. What can we do? Evasive's good. Plus 5 dodge. Stout is pretty dumb, and Ashen is bad. So, not the best result for old Durville there. Darkest Dungeon. Second round of the Warren's boss is down. On to the Cove, Devatron. We'll see you in the next episode.